Hello everybody, Keith here again. Today I'm going to do my what's in bloom at the end of the month video. Not so many of them this time. We've got a few that were in flower that have gone, like the Miltonia Morelliana, the purple one, that's gone. And one or two more, but we've got a few still, and there's a few more to come. There's a lot of Oncidium types to come. My Catatanti's got a massive spike with lots of branches on it. That's just developing nicely, so hopefully that and my Twinkle and some other things will be ready for the end of November. I would like to think so. So I've got a few that are still there, so I've got them behind me. So let's have a look at the first group. There'll be some more to another group after this. Psychopsis mariposa. One which I've been told not a lot of people grow anymore. They're difficult to grow, it's said, and because the spike just keeps going, they can get very, very tall. This one hasn't yet. It does seem to be doing all right for me. It was bought as quite an expensive experiment around about a year ago. We had a holiday in the Balkans, in Croatia, Montenegro, and I bought it from RHS Wisley's Garden Centre. We saw it on the way out and I called it on the way back and picked the last one up. It's done alright. It had two new growths on it when I got it. One of those rotted off and died, which is fairly common, I must admit. But the other one, this one, developed a nice long leaf and the pseudobulb is beginning to swell underneath it. Seems to be quite a slow growing plant to be fair. Although, having said that, this one was the second one to grow and that's grown this year, and the pseudobulb is bigger. So what that means I'm not sure. And then we've got a third one there. Now I'm told that getting these to grow is easier to get them to put another spike out. So that's possibly something I'm going to have a look at. The roots are a bit odd. They're fairly typical Oncidium roots, but they don't automatically go down, and they come out in strange positions, but most of them are going down. I have put moss on the top to try and give it somewhere to go. Now these are one of the orchids which are more moisture loving than some, but as I understand it, and it seems to work for me, they might like it moist, they don't want it soggy. So as you can see, when I repotted it, I used a mixture of bark and moss, really put too much moss in it, and it wasn't drying out very well, so I peppered it full of holes, as I said before, I'm sure, and that helped it. Through the summer that was drying out in just over a week, so I was able to water it. Now, because the temperatures are dropping, the daylight length has slowed, everything's slowing down, it's not drying out as quickly. So instead of giving it a really good soak, I've got to back off the watering, so I just keep the moss damp and still give it a chance to dry off without too much going. But at the moment the flower spike is in about, roughly speaking, a monthly cycle. It'll flower for about a fortnight, it'll then sort of develop for about a fortnight and then bloom again, and at the back of there is a little green nub, which is the next one waiting to come out. This little sweetheart was a very pleasant surprise when I came downstairs yesterday morning. The bud had been developing for a couple of days, and it opened. It's only the second time it's flowered. I got this from Burnham's in a 3-inch pot. It was actually 3 pieces. This is Coleogyne fimbriata. This is the best one. One died. The other one is doing alright. It's ticking over now. I've separated them. It's picking up. This one's got the biggest pseudobulbs. Very unfortunate because it had more flower spikes tried to develop this year. But 3 of them, I think 2 or 3 of them aborted before they got to this stage. But we have got another one coming there. You can see it's moving upwards, and that fairly soon will bend over at a right angle, and that should be out in a bit. Now, the other interesting thing I noticed was at the back of this one, I don't know how well you're going to see it, there is a, oh, it's just come away, but there is what appears to me to be the makings of a second bud. I don't know if these things often have 2 buds on a stem, but I think that one, looking at it, definitely tried to. I didn't notice a scent last year with the first bud. With this one, there's a very, very, very faint, sweet, sort of cakey, marzipan-y type sweet smell. I'd imagine when this thing gets much bigger, as they do, and rambly, I've seen beautiful ones at the East Midlands Orchid Society, absolutely covered in flowers. That could make, you know, quite a pleasant smell. I probably don't keep it all that well. It lives up in the roof, so it gets quite warm. But I keep a very close eye on it, and it's got bark and moss in here. I keep sticking my fingers in to try and make sure it stays reasonably moist, but it's obviously doing all right. Got some nice big pseudobulbs there, so I think we could be reasonably happy about that one. A tiny wee dendrobium. This is a ligophyllum. Bought this from Burnham's about a year ago. I haven't repotted it yet. I've been told I will have to be exceptionally careful because the plant is in a moss plug, and it's got very delicate roots, and if I start hacking roots off, I'm going to lose it, so I'm going to have to be exceptionally careful. I'm absolutely amazed by the way this thing flowers on these stems. Very much like a noble type, but it isn't a noble, I believe. They start off very, very small. I don't know whether you'll be able to see that little tiny thing just poking out the side of the stem, and then they extend and they extend, and then you end up with this really rather sweet little flower with a green stripy throat. And I just noticed that one of those that's on its way, this one has, where are we, can we see that one? Can we see it? It's very hard for me to see what we're doing at the moment, but that's got 2 buds on, which will be a first. Another wee one that I got from Burnham's at the same time last year. This is Phalaenopsis equestris. It's flowered before. First time, very pleased with it. It's grown well, it's got new leaves, really pleased with that. The flowers dropped off, but this spike didn't go brown, so I left it alone, and there were a couple of buds at the end of it which have opened. Now the flowers have not lasted very well at all. Last time it was very much like a Phalaenopsis, they lasted really well. But what we've got is a terminal cakey on the end of the spike, which is great because it's a beautiful little plant. I'd quite like to have more than one of it. So that's nice. Very easy to keep, as far as I can see. Sarah said to me, treat it like any other Phalaenopsis, it'll be fine. and so far so good. My only black hair type, which is Frosty Dawn. Now you're probably wondering why I'm showing these dead flowers. Well, I'm recording this on the 31st of October, and these first two flowers opened in August. So you're talking about 2.5 months for these flowers before they finally let go. I've got this one, which opened later, and just shows the real beauty of this flower. As they get older, that orange sort of thickens and actually comes through onto the back of the lip. But the nice thing is, although these two old ones have come off, as you've just seen, I've got a bud there and another bud there. So I've got a little bit to go yet. We've got new growths coming. There's actually 2 plants in here, but one of them is not very big yet. It's obviously a much younger plant, but you know, it's doing all right for something that, as usual with me, I don't really know what I'm doing, but whatever I'm doing, it likes it. Alisara Marfitch Renaissance Coral. I got this for an absolute song. A friend of mine who used to keep an aquarium, excuse me, an aquatic shop nearby, eventually decided that was going nowhere, and he closed the shop itself, but he continued to keep his dry goods sales going at local markets. And he contacted me one day and he said, I've got hold of some orchids, I know you're into those, come and see. And I got 3 orchids from him, which have all done very well for me. There was this one, there was a cacti, which is in spike at the moment, and another one which is Miltonidium Bartley Schwartz Highland. I was going to say Harvest from the pop group from the 1960s, 70s. But that's in spike. I've got 2 spikes as well, and that is hugely fragrant, so it'll be worth seeing next month. But this one, ever so pleased with this. This is done nicely. It's about the 2nd or 3rd time it's flowered. I've got 2 points of growth, and we've got, as you can see, a 2nd spike with the first blooms just coming on to open. So we're going to have these for a while, and these have been open for a couple of weeks, don't really show any signs of going over yet. So a nice plant, one I'm really happy with, and it's obviously from the colours it's well worth keeping. No ID Mini Fowl. Don't know where I bought it from. I've had it a few years now. It's in absolutely desperate need of a repot. The roots are packing this out and it's shoving it out of the pot, so that's got to be done when this spike finishes. But consider, given the disdain that we often see with these no ID supermarket Phalaenopsis, which are produced obviously by the 1,000. If you'd got to get one, is there anything much prettier than that? It's compact, it's small, it grows quite vigorously, and it's absolutely gorgeous. The only thing it's missing is a scent. I love that one. Always makes me smile when that one comes out. And last but by no means least, the one I call my IKEA dendrobium, because surprisingly enough that's where I got it from. This seems to flower almost when it feels like it. This spike that came was not very good. It put another one out afterwards which has done far better, but it's flowered. It's just a typical spring dream. There's nothing terribly special about it, except it just thrives and does extremely well. Okay, so that's the first group done. So I'll turn the camera off, go and get set, and we'll do some more. See you soon. Okay, we've only got 3 more to do now in the orchid. This is my Zygonissia, identified for me as Rhine Blue Angel, but bought as a no ID, again from Burnham's, about a year ago. I bought it because it's obviously a zygopetalum type, but a very different colour to the majority of them. The green and the purple is replaced by a much paler green, and this mottling, which I find very attractive. It's growing quite well. It's climbing, so I'm going to have to be a bit careful about what I do with it. It may need dipping in the pot just to try and get it down, but it is growing quite steadily, quite nicely, putting roots down. So we're all right for a little while, and hopefully for a few years to come. So I really like that one. It's unusual, that flower. Phalaenopsis minimark. Among my favourite flowers, fairly easy to grow. It sits on a bedroom windowsill, but I don't know, I repotted it in this deep pot because it had a lot of roots, and now the roots seem to be doing anything but go down in the pot, so it probably means there's something wrong down below, so I'll have to fairly soon get it out of the pot. I wanted to get it to go into vegetative growth, but it had a long spike which lasted a long time, just like this one. It was progressive. You get a couple of flowers, and as they fade, the next couple open, and this spike is still going. And I was thinking, when I picked it up to bring it downstairs, oh, you know, this spike will soon be over, and then lo and behold, under there is a branch. So this is one of those orchids that just doesn't know what to do for best. It just keeps flowering. Now that's great, and I've got to keep pushing fertiliser into it because I've got another one which is taking years to recover. It was a big one, just over here. This one was an absolute monster when I bought it, great big plant. No ID, it looks like a name variety called Fancy Fresco, but I don't know whether it is or it isn't. But you can see it had some quite big leaves on it. And one year it flowered, and it just went on flowering and flowering, pushing spikes out. And then it crashed. It dumped lots of leaves, went very quiet and still. It obviously exhausted itself, and you can see very clearly you've got a big leaf there and then a couple of smaller ones. And now at least the last 2 leaves are bigger again. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. And we've now got a good pot of roots, which is obviously a good thing. But that's taken probably 5 years to get back to that. It really did knock itself out. So although we all know Phalaenopsis will flower for a very long time, I didn't realise what it was drawing out of the plant. So that goes without saying. So now that I am very much more careful about watering. Last, but by no means least, by any stretch of the imagination, Pink Twilight is still going strong. We've still got more buds coming on that stem, and the spike is still extending. It's another one that I have to be very careful about fertilising, because I got it 2 years ago as a gift from Lawrence Hobbs at a show where he'd been using it as a demo plant for repotting, and he didn't want to take it home, and he just sort of thrust it at me and said, "Do you want this? Because I don't. Thank you very much." It's a very big plant. I wasn't looking for a big fowl. Really, it was the last thing on my mind. I'm glad I've got it. Very clearly, it's by far the most spectacular of any of the orchids I grow. But like the Mini Mark, I wanted this to go into vegetative growth. So after it finished its previous spike earlier this year, it started to branch, and I thought, no you don't, and cut the spike off right down by the stem, and thought, okay, that's it, we'll get some new leaves and roots and everything else. What did it do? Push this one out instead. So some plants you cannot stop flowering, but if that's what it's going to do, you need to make sure it stays well and truly fed. Right, I'm going to just show you now some of the plants that aren't orchid, the Christmas cacti that we've got that are in flower, and some of the other things that I'm excited about, but I'll have to take the camera off the tripod for that. I've brought a number of my plants that normally live on the top shelf of the white rack in the background down onto this green one, because it's nearer the door and it's getting more light and it's lighter to be cooler, because obviously these are Dendrobium nobiles, most of those are species apart from the IKEA one. I mentioned in the video my Catatanti. It's a very vigorous plant. The pseudobulbs are massive, and it's putting out new growth even as we go here, but look at the size of the spike on that. It's just going up and up and up and up, and I'm not sure that's actually finished growing yet. That is getting on for 2 feet 60 centimetres long, which is quite something. I think you'll agree. I do like Christmas cactuses, even though this one's got no idea whether it's Christmas or not. This is a relatively new one we bought to replace some of our older ones, and what's particularly nice is this puts out, in some cases, multiple flowers per leaf frond. Another one we bought at the same time, which is white, quite an unusual colour I think. Right, and then as we come round here, we've got this one, which I think is one of the most unusual colours I've ever seen on one of these. That is gorgeous. We actually binned a couple of these, which have got very old and rather woody and what have you, and a bit too big. So we actually scrapped a couple, and this came quite close to it because of the age of it, but it's such a gorgeous plant that no, we kept it and trimmed it back a little bit. And then last but by no means least, as I keep saying, I must stop it, we've got this almost a tangerine coloured one, very sweet, but you know, we've got all sorts of spikes to come. That one, that is a no ID Dendrobium phalaenopsis type. It's just a lilac flower. It's the first one I ever bought. I grew it well for a couple of years, repotted it and made a total horlicks of the whole thing. And it suffered, and I didn't realise I'd made a mess of it, and it ended up breaking into about 3 bits. Now 2 of them are flowering. There's another one over there in the background. It's got a spike coming, but the third piece is very small. They're not doing very well at all, but that will be the first time that one has flowered in 3 or 4 years, I think. First chance it's had. That's a Baryoda with a spike showing up there on a previously flowered cane. A Baryoda cacti came off when I managed to knock it off the rack, but that is coming into flower as well. And talking of cactis, that's a cacti off the IKEA Spring Dream. Oh, and I forgot one. Goodness gracious me, I forgot one. Mustn't forget this one. This is Dendrobium tetragonum variant gigantea. Very alien looking flower, possibly even more than the Psychopsis. But this has flowered on several canes this year. Didn't put up a new growth though, which is a little bit worrying, but we'll see what happens next spring when it starts to grow again. Forgot all about that, isn't that a pity? So I'm glad we did this little bit of a walk round. So I'll leave you with that Alisara Marfix Renaissance Coral. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.